Welcome to this another episode of our podcast. Very happy to have all of you here where we talk about universities and how universities engage with other sectors on joint projects, research, innovation, and collaboration. My name is Kari Poutanen, and I'm the industry lead for education at Fluido. And with me is Alan.
Hi, my name is Alan Hughes. I head up education in the UK and Ireland. And with us today is Dr. Marta Herrero, Head of Creative Industry Management at the University of York School of Arts and Creative Technologies. Our background's interdisciplinary, working across sociology, management, organisational studies, and art history. After completing a PhD at the University of Dublin, Trinity College, she's an academic post at the University of Plymouth, the University of Sheffield. And in her latest research, she's working with colleagues at the University of York to design and implement digital technologies as a tool to support non-profit fundraising and public engagement. Hi, Marta.
Hi, thank you, Alan. Thank you, Kari, for the invitation.
Thank you. So you've done research on the impact of COVID-19 on fundraisers within the arts and the cultural sectors in the UK. Drawing on your insights, can you describe the dynamics between universities and NGOs in partnership?
Well, I'm just going to go back a little bit because it was as a result of the research that I did on fundraising studies and fundraising looking at the impact that I started to become really interested in the relationship between digital technologies and supporting nonprofits. So when I moved to the University of York, I already had some experience doing research on fundraising, especially with the COVID-19 survey and interviews that we did. But what I hadn't done before was the idea of working with people that knew about digital technologies. And because now I am still based at the University of York and working with colleagues in this field of digital technologies, it was an opportunity for me to sort of bring both things together, the studies that I had done on fundraising with the application of digital technologies. But it wasn't just an idea that came up because I had moved to an environment where people knew about digital technologies. It was also because out of the survey that I did on COVID-19, it became very apparent, especially when doing the interviews, because we did survey and interviews, that there was a lot of disenfranchisement in terms of whether nonprofits were able to use digital technologies or not, or to what extent. So the survey and interviews, what really revealed was huge disparities in the field of nonprofit, in the arts and culture I'm talking about here. Some organizations, for instance, were very readily able to engage with technology and to provide recordings online so that people could still experience their content and engage with the organization. But very small size nonprofits did not have the ability because they did not have the resources or the knowledge and expertise to deal with anything to do with digital. And then is when I came to the University of York, and with this background, I developed a project that is a collaboration. And this is sort of the question that you're asking me about collaborations. And in this collaboration, what I did was to work with a nonprofit, a very small nonprofit in York, the Council for British Archaeology, and with a colleague who is an expert on digital technologies, Professor John Hook. And what we plan to do, and we've already finished this project, was to create digital materials for the organization so that they could use them to support their fundraising, to encourage more fundraising. We've done the project, and the project was funded through a Master's by Research Scholarship, where we had a student working on the project for a whole year. So she did a lot of interviews, but she also produced what is called an interactive documentary for the CBA, the Council for British Archaeology. And this interactive documentary was about raising awareness about how ethnic minorities engage with archaeology. It's been very successful. Finally, the interactive documentary is online, but it also did raise a lot of issues for us as a research group bringing this project together. And that once we were able to commit and to produce something that was a digital tool, our nonprofit in particular was struggling to be able to use those materials because they did not have the resources. So it was very good to collaborate with researchers for them because we create a lot of data, we interview them, and we also produce something that was a tangible output. What we did not have was the ability to then support the nonprofit in, for instance, updating this digital material, and also knowing how to incorporate it, even things as simple as how to put it on the website. So what it became apparent to me is that the collaboration between the university and the nonprofit was fine, but it was lacking in something. And the other dimension that it was lacking was an engagement with businesses that were able to provide solutions to this conundrum that we had. We've done all the research. We've told you, about ethnic minorities engaging with archaeology. We've done the interactive documentary, but from a management perspective, we did not succeed because the nonprofit was struggling with the materials, with making them accessible. Now, to cut a long story short, the materials are now available on the website, but the model that I'm discussing here is that there is a lack then of engagement with businesses that have a lot of ideas about innovation, and especially could bring a lot of expertise about how to support this specific nonprofit or other nonprofits that find themselves in a similar situation. Having digital materials produced through research projects, but that they're not able to utilize them as much as they would like, and even to update them. In order to continue this path, I did continue to apply for funding and work with a business, a small business in Yorkshire, but we weren't successful. So that meant that the nonprofit again was sort of, trying to find out how we can do this. We wanted to improve the quality of the materials that we had produced to make them more, accessible to the people that watch them. But it didn't happen. And in the end, the nonprofit has been fine. It's got what we produce on the website. But for me, I had a lot of, thinking to do in terms of how research collaborations are set up. And as I said, university and nonprofits is fantastic collaboration, but we do also need the input from businesses that are able to provide us with solutions about how to make these materials available in the long term and how to update them.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and actually a really good point. Like that, almost like it's not just two parties; it's the three parties that you need, because you're missing on the sort of like, how do we solve this, right? You're getting all the data, but you're missing that. So I'm really interested about this collaboration part, because you mentioned data there, I think a few times. How do you think that data can support the collaboration between NGOs and the university doing research? And how do you think that, what role does data play in ensuring that you work towards the same goals?
I think data is very important, but when I talk about data, what I really am talking about is, in terms of the research project that we were doing, was trying to understand the organization better, trying to understand what the challenges and opportunities were that they had, and trying to understand about their vision and their remit, so that when we produce something, it's going to be something that is aligned with their interest and their vision. So this type of data is actually really, really important, to have this in-depth knowledge. And I'm thinking perhaps that other projects that are maybe more business orientated, or where the relationship is just between the nonprofit and a business, this type of in-depth data research that gives us a lot of insight into the nonprofit and its management will be missing. So in answer to your question, I think data, or that in-depth research, is absolutely essential if we don't want to end up in a situation where nonprofits access businesses. They bring some certain solutions, but they're not really informed and rooted in a very in-depth knowledge and understanding of the nonprofit.
So, but building on that, how do you see the role of data and analytics in aiding fundraisers within the arts and cultural sectors to navigate the challenges posed by something like the pandemic? Is that reflected in the emerging trends or innovative approaches that have been adopted in fundraising strategies?
So say that again, because that's a very long question.
Well, how do you see the role of? Well, let's take it in two parts. How do you see the role of data analytics in aiding fundraisers within the arts and cultural sectors to navigate the challenges posed by something like the pandemic?
Well, I think data, in other words, for me, when we say data analytics, is data to understand the nonprofits better, whether it's through surveys, whether it's through interviews, is absolutely essential. Because if we do not understand what the nonprofits are actually struggling with, or what the opportunities are, especially when it comes to in the area that I was looking at, the fundraiser, we won't be able to to do any more for them. So I think I'm answering your question, but I'm not sure about the data analytics, because when I talk about data, it's the data that I collect through research.
Yeah.
So it's not so much about, obviously there is a certain interpretation of the data, whether it's survey data or data coming from interviews, but that is at the level that I'm thinking about when it comes to data analysis.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to interpret it, because I sort of understand what you mean. And analyzing the data, essentially looking at the data and interpreting what does the data mean for us, and then planning an action based on that, which is what you're saying that the research is doing. So I think that's fine. I want to take this into another direction a bit with the next question, because I'm really interested in what you think is, how does the collaboration with NGOs for the universities, I mean, how does that contribute to the impact and value creation of the wider community?
I think it's really essential that we work on very in-depth case studies that are to do with individual organizations, so that then we can draw more generalized guidelines, and also some guidelines that can also hopefully influence policy. So at the moment, we work with a nonprofit sector that is not particularly well funded. And unless we understand what the struggles and the opportunities are when it comes to using digital technologies, and we have quite a lot of responses and understanding of the field, then is when we can actually make an impact, make a difference, not just to the nonprofit like we did by producing something that is digital for them, but by engaging in these wider issues with policymakers and saying, okay, so if nonprofits do struggle with digital, even though it's something that it can benefit the delivery, can benefit the fundraising and the public engagement strategies, what are we then to do at policy level to support them? And obviously the answer will be more targeted types of funding that are focusing on enhancing digital skills within the nonprofit sector, which are very much missing in certain parts of the sector.
No, we've talked about the roles of alumni. Can you describe the value of a strong alumni network in a target industry for a university, and using your own examples?
Yeah, so alumni is it's a completely different issue, but it's related, because when we're talking about alumni, what we're talking about are students that have been at university and that they're going to be our future supporters. Yeah, future donors. So not just alumni in the generic sense that are people that have studied there, but ideally we do want to engage with them in a way that it's a deep bond that they create with the university, so that afterwards they're going to feel like a sense perhaps of gratitude or empathy with the organization, with the university in this case, and they're going to be willing and contribute with donations, or even if they go into the world of business with corporate sponsorship. So it is essential that universities address their alumni in ways that help them build this long-term bond. And that is a challenge. And I could tell you why I think it's a challenge, but perhaps you want to ask me another question before I go on to this.
Well, actually, I think that's a really good point that you bring across there. And I completely agree with you, what you said there. It's a different thing, but it's very, very much connected. And but if we think about, maybe, like, you can talk about the challenges or in any way you want to, but the question that I had in mind was that, how can you make sure that you're getting the most out of your alumni network as a university, in engaging them in these different ways?
Okay, so it's interesting because we had this conversation also with Alan, and it's all to do with what do we mean by alumni. And alumni is a very generic word that encompasses a lot of very different types of students. And from my experience, and I teach postgraduates, and I teach postgraduates only that are doing a one-year degree, mostly from overseas, and then they leave the university. So how do you engage with these students that are only spending 1 year in the UK, and then we're very likely not to ever see them again? We do need to engage with them and to create a deep bond between the experiences of being at the university and them wanting to engage further with the university after they have left, during the time that they are at university. And this is itself a challenge because students are busy, they are studying, they don't see themselves as sort of, the next donors or the next corporate sponsors for the university. But that relationship, so we engage with students in terms of a teaching and learning relationship, but while they are, let's say, in York or in any other university, in the case of postgraduate students that are here only for a year, we do need to create that bond by making them aware of what the university is doing, what the activities are that are supporting with fundraising, that are supporting perhaps scholarships or are supporting the wider community at York, so that they do then understand that in the future, they may actually have a very good role to play in supporting all these initiatives. What is needed, however, is a very clear understanding of the different types of students that we have. And, to put it in very basic language, what makes them tick. So what makes them actually want to become involved, or how would they want to become involved in the long term? In order to do that, it's not just about understanding what the different types of students you have in universities, but it's about also doing the research. So again, going back to the idea of research, we do need to research these students. We do need to research students, different types of categories of students. For instance, the ones that I'm working with, I've been working with for the last 15 years, are overseas postgraduate students. We do need to understand them well. And this is why, with a colleague at the School for Business and Society, we have developed a project, which is a project that looks at students' experiences and challenges of adapting from an overseas environment to a UK environment, at the University of York in particular, because that's where I'm based. Once you start collecting these data, we haven't got the data yet. We're doing a survey, and we plan to do survey and interviews. Once we understand these students better, then we can start thinking about what sort of practices we can put in place to promote that sort of engagement. So it's not just about sending an email once a student has left the university and saying, do you remember us? Will you make a donation? That is not going to do anything. But with the research that we're doing, we might be able to actually find out what things are important to the students, what gives them a sense of home while they're abroad, and how the university can actually promote more positive experiences for them in that sense. And this is when you start to understanding their students as as future alumni, as potential donors. But this has to be based on research. And that is what I'm working on as well.
I suppose what you talked about, the kind of crossover and the roles of alumni. You'll be potentially becoming donors, potentially becoming business sponsors. When you're engaging with NGOs, how often do you find that there's also a relationship with someone in that organization as an alumnus as well? There's somebody who has that link with the university existing.
Yeah, this is actually interesting because with the NGO that I engage with, the nonprofit organization, there was an alumni. So one of the people that worked there did her PhD at the University of York. And what happens is, and that's really an interesting question, when you have an ex-student or an alumni working in a nonprofit, it's very easy then for a university, like the same university the alumni is from, to come along and to be able to engage with them in research projects, because they feel that they are somehow already part of that university. So, for instance, when I started my collaboration with this nonprofit in York, I was based in Sheffield. It never occurred to me, I could have done it, but to start this collaboration, obviously, because I wasn't looking at digital then. But then as soon as I became based at the University of York, I felt I had more sense of, I was more secure in myself that the nonprofit was going to say yes to any type of engagement, because there was the alumni in this nonprofit and I came from the University of York. So it does help to have alumni in nonprofits. It's not essential.
Yeah.
It's not essential though, but it helps initially.
Excellent.
Yeah, no, I completely understand that as well. And I think it's something we've seen in a lot of places, that there's this sort of cross-pollination, or there's this benefit to sort of like not boxing people in one role. People can have multiple roles, right? And you need to identify them when you're engaging that. Who are they actually, and what's the existing relationship? I think I want to now turn your thoughts a bit towards the future. And the thing that I'm really interested in hearing, Marta, is how do you see the future in relation to enhancing relationships between the public partner institutions and alumni? And what role, if any, do you think that technology will play in the future in enhancing these relationships?
I think technology is essential. It is essential because it can help the nonprofit sector. Especially when I'm looking at my own research, it can enhance its fundraising, it can promote giving. So it is essential that that happens. In terms of looking at the future, what is not happening so much is that there is funding or perhaps financial resources for doing that type of research when we actually look at how nonprofits can enhance their practices, their mission, their vision, and the delivery of services by accessing digital technologies, whether it's interactive media, VR, like we did a project with virtual reality, or whether it's now AI. So it is essential that looking at the future, we have this three-part collaboration where we have the nonprofit, but we also have a business that is going to help us understand what sort of digital needs the nonprofit has and how to be able to best deliver those digital needs and technologies for the nonprofit. There has to be research done on this particular aspect, and it would be really ideal if there was a committed interest on the part of funding bodies in the UK to support this type of fundraising and nonprofit research. At the moment, my experience is sort of mixed in that. There are certain areas that funders obviously do prioritize. They do prioritize anything to do with finance, with crisis, with poverty, with immigration, with health. But a more thorough understanding of the sector and its excuse me, and its financial resources and how they can enhance and increase their finances, it's missing. And my experience has been that it's not that easy to then get the funding to do that type of research.
Yeah, that's well said, and that's I think a great place to leave it at. So we've reached the end of our podcast. I want to thank you, Marta. It's been a very much a pleasure having you here, and thank you for your insights. Thank you for our listeners as well. Hope you've enjoyed the episode, and if you want to hear more from Dr. Marta Herrero, she will be attending as a speaker in our coming event, 28th of February. So sign up for that if you want to hear more from Marta. So from me, thank you and have a nice day.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you both.
Thank you.